Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Mike Ames Recruitment Show, where, as you can see, we're talking about starting doing recruitment business in America. And we have an excellent guest on today who Mike's going to introduce in a second, who explains how to start and build things in a thriving US practice based in the UK. Before then, I have to introduce Mike. How you doing today, big guy?
I'm very good. A bit better than you by the sound of it. I don't know. You're still smoking those Cuban cigars I bought you for your birthday.
I've been listening to a lot of Barry White, and I kind of it's just had an effect on me. I had laryngitis, and I'm getting better, but slower than I would like. So I
Could you not
apologize.
speak for a while? Could you not speak for a
I
while?
haven't been speaking all day. My boyfriend is ecstatic.
Is there any chance you could breathe on Mom a couple of times? I don't know whether that would
I'm
work.
telling you, said that.
Anyway, look, let's crack on, shall we? So the whole point of bringing Lindsay on is that I went to see him speak at an event, and he was very good because he talked about the whole shizzle of working in the States, why you would bother, how he did it, and he just made it sound so logical, really, and appealing. I almost started up Flair US recruitment services or something of that nature. No. So, but he did, and I thought, yeah, and I think quite a few people are interested in setting up a practice in North America. So I thought, let's bring the two together. So can we bring Lindsay in, please?
We can. Here he is. Hello, Lindsay.
Hi, guys. You okay?
Hi, Lindsay. Yeah, very good. So Lindsay's the founder and CEO of Hannison Green, and that's a med tech search company entirely focused on the States, hence obviously coming on the show to talk about that. So could you just give us a little bit of background for you, because some people might not know who you are?
Yeah, sure. So I'm 22 years into the recruitment industry. 17 of those years were in the corporate world at SThree. I was there from trainee to partner right up until COVID. And I think it was about July 2020, I was forced at a crossroads with my career. And that's when I decided to set up Hannison Green and go alone. And yeah, it's crazy to think that this September we're going to be 5 years old.
Wow. That is interesting, because a lot of corporate people, and I've known a tremendous amount of people who've come through the SThree route. They're corporate through and through, and the thought of actually setting up on their own is, if it's not scary, they try it and it's not for them and they go back to the corporate world. But you've thrived, haven't you? This was a big step forward. That every cloud has a silver lining.
I just had to make it work, Mike. I just had to make it work. Yeah, I never saw myself as a corporate person. We were quite a smaller company when I joined there, and we kind of became corporate. I'd always wanted to set up my own recruitment company, and being completely honest, I just lacked the courage to do it. It literally took a pandemic to kick me into action. And yeah, I'm thankful for that, for all the devastation that it caused across the globe. I actually benefited from it, because Hannison Green wouldn't be here, I don't think, if it wasn't for the pandemic.
Well, we share that. You're right to draw out this whole concept of, it was a terrible time, because it was. People died, people lost their businesses and so on, but it transformed our business too. Anyway, so there you are, sitting at the old desk on the first day. Right, well, I better do some recruitment then. And then next thing you know, you're targeting the States and you're kicking off your Florida adventure and so on and so forth. Talk us through all of that. Why did you choose the States? What did you decide to do there? Talk us through how that worked.
Okay, couple of key things here, I think. I chose not to do the UK, first and foremost. I decided I didn't want to recruit in the UK. So being a partner at SThree, managing through layers, I was quite far removed from the customer, but I got to see and hear how my consultants and managers were treated, how they were spoken to by internal recruiters. And I just think the industry in the UK is so saturated. I just don't think that it's an industry that's got that much respect. And I'd had a chap working for me over the years at SThree. He runs his own business now in the US. and he recruited in the US. He was a bit of a rogue consultant of mine. He shouldn't have been recruited in the US because you've got your jurisdictions and stuff in SThree because it's such a big company. But he was a bit of a rogue trader, and for a few years he did deals in the US, and they just seemed to come easier. If I compared him to the rest of my business, how they were doing deals in the UK, the salaries were higher, the fees were higher. He seemed to engage a lot more with his customer base, so that it was quite an easy decision for me. Equally, I had contract restrictions at SThree, which played a part. You know, I'd been there 17 years. I wanted to maintain a bit of loyalty. I didn't want to give them any reason to come after me. And I also wanted to reinvent myself. There was a big part of this that let's see how much I can change myself and push myself. I hadn't been on the tools tried working this out the other week. I think it was 13 years before since I'd done a deal.
Blood and sand.
Wow. 13 years, wow. Yeah.
So
these recruiters want to get off the tools quite quickly when they go down the management path. I was one of those. I just wanted to be a leader. And so that was big for me.
So just to get this straight then, so you 13 years, you'd obviously been involved in recruitment, like you said, you're watching your guys do stuff, you're aware of the problems that they're coming up against, and you're helping them overcome these problems and work with them. But actually picking the phone up and getting a vacancy or going out and trying to find candidates, it's kind of ixnay for 13 years then. Wow.
Yeah.
That is a long time. Yeah, that's double bravery then. So, okay, so you chose the states. Now, originally, I think you decided, in your words, not mine, to conquer America state by state, and you opted for Florida. Not because it's the Sunshine State and because Disney is there, obviously, but why did you choose Florida? And was that the best strategy to move forward with?
It was pretty simple logic that led me to that decision. In hindsight, I think it was really flawed, but it still worked out for me. There was a bit of chance that enabled me to find my niche, but my research told me that California was the biggest medtech state. With that being West Coast, that was an 8-hour time difference, and I'd never worked across time zones before, so I chose Florida, with it being the second biggest medtech state, the numbers back then, and it being East Coast. It was only a 5-hour difference, so I thought, I'll conquer Florida. So naive when I look back on it. I'll conquer Florida, and then once I've made a name for myself in Florida, I'll move into other states. I would do that differently now. But yeah, that was my strategy.
Well, two things on that. Two things. Firstly, can I roll you back a little bit? What's your background in medtech, or was that another new thing you just chose that you thought you might just do from scratch?
Brand new. I'd never recruited into medtech before.
Obvious question. Why did you choose medtech?
Okay, good question. So it was a market that I didn't work at SThree. So again, going back to the contract thing, I think more importantly than that, I knew I was going to be isolated. I knew it was just going to be me. I wouldn't have a team around me. So I needed to pick an industry that I could get excited about and that had some real meaning, some purpose, helping people, improving quality of life. You know, I can get out of bed and feel excited about that each day. So that's why I chose medtech. And look, as long as humans are around, it's going to be a growth market. Medtech will always be a growth market. So I put those two together, and that's why I chose medtech.
And we're going to come back to this in a little while because we're going to talk about, well, okay, you've made that decision. You've picked almost like a random name out of the internet. Medtech, I'll do medtech. I'm sure there was more to it than that. And then you must have researched that and gone into it, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And how you actually started to get vacancies and fill those vacancies, because I think people are interested in that. But first, you said that your strategy was flawed. I was interested to understand a little bit about that statement.
Just the state-by-state approach. I don't think it's necessary. Look, the US is a huge market. In medtech terms, it's 40% of the global market. It's huge, but I just don't think it's almost like just recruiting in a postcode. In the UK, that to me doesn't make sense. I think you become an expert in something and you go wide. So I would, if I did it again, I would have just gone into the whole of the US, but maybe been a little bit clearer on the subsector within medtech.
Right, the micro niche.
Yeah, the micro, because another niche that I've got, and I went in with this niche as well. So it was Florida, and it was commercial leadership. I'd always liked over the years. I built a very successful sales business at SThree. They'd never done sales before. And so hiring people into sales, marketing roles, into management, leadership positions. So I really like dealing with those people. So it was Florida, and it was sales VPs and marketing VPs. I thought if I could penetrate these divisions from the top down, these people will be building teams. That was logical for me. I've always seen the benefit in doing senior recruitment rather than putting people in at a low level.
Yeah. And obviously, as you said earlier, bigger salaries and bigger fees as well. So a double whammy, really, when it comes to your bottom line. It's quite a cool thing to do, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, it is. And look, I know you might want to come on to this, but do you want me to talk you through why the US, now that I'm sort of 5 years in,
give us your reflections on that, because you're still in the US market, so obviously it's working out for you. Give us some reflections on that.
Yeah, sure. I knew a lot of this before I went in, but now I'm approaching 5 years. This for me is why the US is head and shoulders above working in the UK market. Okay, so there's no notice periods. I think anybody that's listening to this recruiting in the UK, hiring for senior roles, you're looking at 3-month notice periods in the UK, 6-month notice periods, sometimes a year. And not only that, everybody gets counter offered. I really remember that about the UK market. If you're taking somebody good out of a company and getting them an offer elsewhere that they accept, they're going to get counter offered. And they're not just going to get counter offered once, they're going to get counter offered a bunch of times during their notice period. And it's just one of the most painful things to go through as a recruiter. Having a candidate accept an offer and then dropping out 2 months later down the line while they're still on the notice period. It's just incredibly painful. So there's a thing in the US called at will. You might have heard of it. 49 of the 50 states apply at will. It's like if you watch the movies and you see somebody going into work and then 5 minutes later they've got their cardboard box where they're planting it and they're out the door. That is the US market.
Are you talking about zero notice clause here? Is that how it works then?
49.
Is that both sides, from employer and employee?
Both sides, yeah. So this is linked to another thing. Candidates will easily talk to you because they've always got one eye on the market because of that. So if you get an offer for somebody, and this could be C-level, chief commercial officers, chief executive officers, they're starting work for you within 2 weeks of you getting them an offer. So it eliminates the risk of counter offer. You're getting paid quicker. It's just a completely different landscape.
Wow.
The salaries are higher. They pay rate card. I don't think I've ever worked under 25% in the US. I'm probably about 70% of my placements are at full rate card, 30%. The rest they might ask to come down to my second banding, which is 25%. They just pay it. Wow. And they'll pay on bonus, even if it's not guaranteed. So if it's a 200 grand basic salary and the on-target earnings means they can earn 300 grand, you will invoice on 300 grand.
Wow.
And that is standard practice. I think I've had it once where I've had a kickback on that.
Kirsty, I was joking a minute ago about
I'm just thinking myself.
That's not a joke anymore. I'm in. I'm totally in.
You're in.
Yeah.
It's less crowded, Mike. It's less crowded. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think there's about half the recruiters in the US than in the UK.
I know the numbers actually. I saw some data on this a wee while ago. So whether these are still accurate figures, I don't know, but they're not going to be a million miles adrift. In the United Kingdom, there's about 30,000 recruitment companies. In the United States, the market is 4 times as big.
Yeah.
And there are only 12,500 recruitment companies in the States.
There you go.
So there's a lot more. The reason is there's a lot more bigger companies. That's what that means, basically.
Yeah.
So,
and Mike, sorry, that there leads me to probably the main reason I like the US over and above all that great stuff I've just talked about there. And going back to my point about hearing and seeing how my staff were treated in the UK. In the US, you get treated with respect. It's an industry that is seen as being a respectful industry sector. So you don't get people talking down to you. You've obviously got But
I've got a couple of questions coming in, or statements, but I just want to just close this down and then go over to Kirsty, who's weeing herself there. I think we were talking off air about this, and I'm very definite on this. I think in the United Kingdom, the trouble starts with us as recruiters, because we don't think of ourselves as worthy as, say, a lawyer or an accountant or an architect, and that's just nonsense. If you think of yourself as a professional service provider, first and foremost, not a recruiter, professional service provider, I think that comes out in the way you communicate and the way you hold yourself. And I think if people see you as that, they're going to pay more. But in the States, it's natural. That's how they see most recruitment companies, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree with all of that, Mike.
Okay, right. So before we move on, there's a couple of comments that I want to handle. So Ian said he's been working with a US customer who just voluntarily increased their fees. Mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, mind-boggling to me. So somebody has asked, and I think this is a good time to bring this question up. Jamel's asked, would you say this is a candidate or a client-led market in the US? Or at least
can we hold that thought? Because that's our next discussion point. I know there's a couple of other things you want to bring out in a minute.
The other things are around the catches or the challenges. And I know that we're going to look at that later on in the program. So I promise I've seen your questions. I will bring them up later because we've got a section for it. I'm very planned out, very organized. I do want to go on.
I feel foolish now. I feel old and foolish.
As you should. That's what I wanted.
A bit redundant. I think I'm leaving. Yeah.
So
okay.
Let's this is
let's
a good
press
question.
it. Bring Jamal's question up again. There you go. Right. So again, going back, there you are sitting at the desk. You've made a decision. Right, medtech. Going to start with Florida. That seems to be the way forward. Yada yada yada. What next? What are you going to do?
Okay. So this is very clear to me. You start with a candidate strategy. The way I see it, you could be the best salesperson in the world with the best patter, the best pitch. If nobody knows you, you don't know the market. More importantly, nobody knows you. So going in and trying to pull jobs by convincing a client that you're best recruiter that they've ever spoken to, just to me sounds like that's maybe a bit of a stretch too far. All really hard work with little reward. So if you can go in and approach a client, and rather than talking about yourself and how great a recruiter you are, you're introducing a real top tier candidate to them that maybe it's from one of their competitors perhaps, but they've got a very relevant skill set and real value that they're bringing. And that client is only going to get that candidate through you and no other means. That for me is pretty straightforward. That is the best.
We need to drill down into this, right? Because when I saw you speak at that event, this was one of the things that struck me, because I can't remember exactly what you said. It was something along the lines of, I find great candidates whether they're looking for a new job or they're not.
Yes.
If they're not looking, I court them over time until they are. And if they are, or when they are, I then ask for exclusivity for a period of time, I presume. Because we all know what an NPC is, of course, but this is an ex-NPC, isn't it? This is an exclusive most placeable candidate. Could you just talk about how you do that and how that goes down in the States and how long you get exclusivity for and how you approach the clients with it? Because I think our audience would be interested in this.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think just reminding you of the point earlier about the at-will status in the US, it means that even if a candidate is incredibly happy in their role, they love their company, they love the culture, the vision and everything, they're completely engaged, they will always have one eye on the market. They have to, because anything could change really quickly from day to day. So that means that they're a lot more accessible. That doesn't mean to say that you can like send a generic message to a dozen candidates in your market and they're all going to respond. They're not. They're still not going to reply to crap. So for me, I target the people that I want to speak to. And in my case, when I started out, it was sales VPs. So I was just looking at let's have a look at some sales VP profiles. And I was probably looking at ones that have had good career progression, that have shown that their career's advanced, and they look, from an outsider looking in, because I can only see their LinkedIn profile, they look like they're a good candidate. Not a good candidate, a great candidate. recruiters.
Were these medtech sales VPs or
Yeah,
any
medtech sales VPs, yeah. And then I'm reaching out to them and haven't got any jobs, so I'm not going to bullshit them. I'm not going to tell them that I've got jobs. And I think that's such a cliche. If you lead with a job anyway, you've got a great profile. I've got a job that you might be suitable for. I don't think you get a very good response from that. But if you change your approach and you start talking about them, and you actually pick something out of their profile and compliment them on it. So you're not somebody who's just sent them a generic message. You've actually looked at their profile. It makes such a big difference. I've seen it. You've been at this company for 6-7 years. You've been promoted three times. Wow, you must be really good at what you do. Or you comment about something they've done earlier in their career. Just pick something out and compliment them. I can't tell you the difference that will make to your response rate. It will just go through the roof. Pretty much everybody will respond. And then you lead in with saying that, look, you're probably happy where you are because it looks like your career is going really well. But I'm going to be an expert in your space, or I do work within your niche, and I want to build relationships with the top tier of talent. And I see you as perhaps being one of those top tier candidates. I'd love to get to know you. I'd love to understand your career aspirations. And maybe I could be an asset to you at some point in the future. Something like that, you'll get a 70, 80, maybe even 90% response rate, in my opinion and my experience.
And this is all done through LinkedIn messages or in mails?
Messages, yeah, in mail. Yeah, I'm not cold calling any of these candidates because I haven't got their contact details. Yeah, it's a LinkedIn in mail, and you'll get a high response rate from that. And then it's down to you on the phone or a video meeting, whatever it might be, to build that rapport with them and demonstrate that you're somebody they should want to get to know. And you're in
okay, so these people, they're not looking necessarily, although some of them perhaps are when you begin to talk to them.
Yeah.
I've got two questions really. The first one, you seem to be taking timing out of it, which is very anti-recruiter.
It is.
Most recruiters are looking to make a transaction, and therefore timing is everything. And it's like, come on, let's go. And you're sort of saying, well, no, actually, no. When you're ready, then I'm there for you. But between then and now, let's just get to know each other. Have I got that right? Is that the stance that you're taking?
Yeah. Great observation, Mike. I've never really wanted to be, maybe in my earlier career, but as I've got more mature and older, I don't want to be a transactional recruiter. I want to operate through relationships and meaningful relationships. Things can still happen quickly, but what's worked really well for me generally over the last 4 to 5 years is working hard on building meaningful, trusting relationships with candidates and actually focusing on their outcomes rather than my own. I think if you do that, people will want to kind of spend time with you and get to know you. They'll trust you quickly.
Okay. So the next question, when do you bring up exclusivity as something that you want to get from them?
Okay, so I don't always use that word exclusivity. I will, if they're passive, I will just get to understand, are they looking? Are they talking to any other recruiters? I don't want them to say yes to those. I want them to say that they're quite happy. Once they understand that you're a genuine person and that you're focused on their objective rather than your own, they'll open up to you. They'll open up to you really quickly. Within the first 1 or 2 calls, you can get information from them about things that they're not happy with in their current role, what their ideal company might look like, or their ideal career opportunity. And then that just takes you down a path to, right, let's work on that together. Let's identify who the companies are that you want to work for, why you want to work for them. Let's understand how I sell you to those companies. Work with me on actually putting a value proposition forward so that I'm not just listing your experience. I'm actually talking about the real value that you can bring. And then work with me exclusively on that list. I'll go after those companies for you and I'll try and create some positions and some opportunities.
Wow, that's really impressive.
So we're not chasing live jobs. I don't care if they're recruiting or not. I'm just looking to maybe, is there a gap there that we can exploit, that this person can come in and actually help them move the dial? And that's the approach.
That's
and they won't have heard of that before. Probably not in the US.
No.
That's so interesting that you're not chasing jobs. I think that's fascinating.
We've got to come back to the jobs thing in a minute, but I think Kirsty will have to take some questions because there's about 1 million.
There are quite a few, but they're very much in the next section around the mechanics of it. So do you want to just have a couple more minutes in here and then we'll move on to mechanics?
Okay, you'll have a couple of more minutes and we'll go over then, because I'm very conscious I want to answer all of those questions.
Yeah, you've got 3 minutes, Mike. You've got 3 minutes.
On the screen. Okay. So what I'm hearing is that your de facto approach is to find great candidates, and then from the candidates, is that what you learned about medtech as well from the candidates? I mean, you must have Googled it a few times.
That's how I got my niche. That's how I found my niche, through the candidates. I always hoped that they would lead me toward a niche, and that's what happened a couple of weeks into me trading.
And so you became more knowledgeable about medtech, and the more you speak to people, the more knowledgeable you become, and the more knowledgeable the easier it gets to speak people. So it's kind of like a fortuitous circle, isn't it? Okay. Right. So one other thing then, just before we head over to Kirsty and the questions, this idea of being led by the candidates, I totally agree with that. And I've always said that with niche. You've heard me say on here before that is the way to focus to build a niche, is through the candidates, 100%, because that's your starting point. However, the question is, do you actually occasionally chase vacancies, or do you look for live vacancies that you would get on a retained basis, or is it always 100% led by candidates and just trying your arm at the various places that they come up with to try and find a vacancy for them?
My BD has always been led by candidates. I've never chased what I would have called a D job back at SThree, a lead. I've never chased a lead. I've never cold called. This is debatable. We could probably talk about this for hours, but I haven't done a single cold call in five years. I haven't done anything unsolicited.
No, you won't debate that with me, because I don't believe in cold calls. So yeah, you got me on that one.
The people still fly the flag on it, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be that recruiter just chasing everything.
Because it's very transactional. You're hitting people to try and get a cross between their need and your contact call, and that's really hard to do, I think. Anyway, I know Kirsty's kind of jumping up and down a bit, so I've got one more question on my previous stuff, really. So do you ever get vacancies? Sorry, do you ever post someone in, or sell someone in, or spec someone in, and they say, no, that's not right, but actually we are looking, is there anybody else that you've got? Does it turn into a vacancy sometimes?
Yeah, it does. That's the goal. So if the candidate's not quite right for them, you've given such a good first impression by being knowledgeable about your candidate and the company that you're approaching, that they invite you in to talk about a job that your candidate's not suitable for, but maybe you might be able to help them. In fact, my very first placement came from that method. I was working a VP of marketing from Florida, and he's the reason I did neuromodulation, by the way, which is another story. And I worked him to a target list of companies, and one of those companies responded and said, we're actually after a marketing VP, but this person doesn't quite fit the bill. Can you find me somebody that can do that? And then, and then that's retained.
I thought that was so it is. I thought you were sort of saying to us that it was a BD method as well as a revenue generating method, and it's kind of both, isn't it, leading with the candidates? Okay, Kirsty, come on, over to you.
Okay, so we're moving on now to a section based on sort of the mechanics of it. And so we've got a couple of questions, Lindsay, that I think are fairly quick fire ones. So Lee has asked, is it advisable to have a US phone number, or do you keep with the UK one?
I don't have a phone number. So I've got a London address. I live in Sutton Coldfield. I had a London address, Covent Garden, purposefully, because everybody in the US knows London. I had a London telephone number for the first 2 years. US clients love dealing with the UK recruiters. So I wanted to be very clear. I'm calling you from the UK. I am based in the UK. They like dealing with us. But about 2 years in, I got rid of the phone number, because I found that the way that I was recruiting, and because it's such a high level and the numbers are quite low, I never had a sales inquiry come in once. It's just people trying to sell me stuff. Like I'd have 10 calls a day and it's just people selling me shit. So it was just a distraction I didn't need. So I just binned it. I think we're in a world now, certainly in my recruitment world, where if people want to work with me, they're going to send me a WhatsApp message via my website, or they're going to contact me on LinkedIn with a direct message.
Fair enough. I like that. Respect it. Okay. So the next question, it's sort of semi-answered by what you said, but I want to put it out. So Alan's asked, are you portraying yourself as being based in the US with LinkedIn location, etc., as another couple of UK businesses he knows are, or is it something you've never seen the need to do?
No, it's the same as the last question, Alan. I'm proud to be a UK recruiter service in the US because they like that.
Okay.
I've heard that, by the way. I've heard that elsewhere. That's a thing.
They
Don't
put us
try
on a
and hide your
pedestal.
Britishness.
Yeah, they put us
Yeah.
on a pedestal, Mike, for some reason. It's crazy. They just put us on a level above there. Even though they're such a patriotic country, and they like dealing with their own people, when it comes to recruitment, I think they would prefer to use a UK recruiter than a US recruiter.
Wow,
Okay.
that's good to know,
Amazing.
isn't it?
Okay, so then Manoj is asking, from a legal and compliance perspective, what do you need to have in place to trade? Things like legal entity, insurance, payments, etc., so on and so forth.
You might want to get indemnity insurance. I've chosen not to do that because I'm only doing perm recruitment. I think if you're doing contracts, you probably need to have a look at that. The only thing that I've ever needed, and I think this might come up on the screen in a sec, is you need to download and fill in a form. It's called a W8 form, but this is the specific form that you need, that you can see there, W8BENE. So if you just go into a search engine and search for that form and download, you can download it. It's a PDF. It looks quite complicated to fill in, but I just went onto a YouTube video how to fill in this form, and it's actually really straightforward. And I don't mind sharing mine with anybody if they want to see it and copy it. But this is an IRS form. It's a mandated form from them, which in simple terms, it proves to anybody that you're working with in the US that you are a UK entity and you are exclusively governed by UK tax laws. So you pay your tax in the UK and nowhere else. Some clients will ask you for that form. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. But upon you reaching a placement or getting close to doing a placement, or once you've done one, some clients might ask you, have you got a W8 form, or do you need to pay tax in the US? No, you don't need to pay tax in the US. If you don't provide that form, you can be at risk of them withholding some of the fee. But I've only been asked for it about 2 or 3 times because I work with startups. If you're working with medium to large size companies, they'll ask you for that form. That for me is all I've needed in 5 years.
And do you have to register the form then? Do you have to send it somewhere?
No, you just fill it in and save it to your files on your computer, and then just when asked for it, you just send it to them.
Okay.
And the hyphens
so it's for their
important.
records then?
Sorry?
You go, Mike.
So that it's just for their records, really. You filled it in, signed it, sent it to them.
Yeah,
so
if they get asked any questions from the IRS about who they're transacting with, then they can demonstrate that they're dealing with a UK entity.
Okay. And I was just saying, for that, to search for it, the hyphens are important. Okay, that's okay. So I'm just trying to see what other questions we've got. Somebody's asked this. This is a slightly skewiffed one, slightly away from it. Is there a particular state that you think has a lot of growth or a lot of space to move into, where you kind of go into like a little hotbed of activity, do you think?
In medtech generally, I'd say probably Texas, Boston. Massachusetts, Texas. In my market, neuromodulation, it'd probably be California.
Okay, amazing. So I think I'm conscious of the time. So in a second, Lindsay, we're going to come and talk about the challenges, because it's been a very rosy point of view so far, and I'm intrigued to see if there are any challenges. But before then, Mike, we've got a sponsored message that's a little different to the sponsored messages we've been doing before.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Obviously, we sponsor ourselves now. That's one of the things that we do. We tried having a sponsor, and we loved the sponsor, by the way. If ever you're looking for finance for your business, Giant, the guys that you need, Rich Beresford, reach out to him. Very good company. But we just felt more comfortable just being like this, really, I suppose. So this is us now. But what we are launching is a sort of a newsletter plus. It's a VIP content access. It's going to be driven by the Mike Ames Recruitment Show. It's going to come out free, totally free. It's going to come out once a month, and it's going to have the 2 shows that we did last month and the 2 shows that we're doing next month. So you can register for the new shows and you can watch the old ones if that's what you want to do. We're also going to put a little reflection section in there for you. And there's going to be content that you won't get from anywhere else. So that's going to be in the form of interviews, which will be exclusive interviews only for people in that club. And also we're going to run workshops, in-person workshops, yours truly, most of the time, occasionally Pete and Kirsty, depends on the subject, but they'll be invitation only through the group. So you don't have to do anything now, but you will receive an invitation from us. And I want you to know what it is. It's this. It's something that we'd like you to consider, because we want to create our community around our content, and we want to add tremendous amounts of value based on that content. So just keep your eyes out, and I'll talk about this next time and explain a little bit more about it, what it's called and what's going to happen. But just thought I'd give you a heads up that time round.
Okay, all right, perfect. Now, let's move on. So, Lindsay, we've had a couple of questions. Number one from James is what's the catch, which I very much enjoy how succinctly he's put that. But we have one question which I know resonates, because a lot of the people that we work with want lifestyle businesses. It's very much that they want it to work around their family and stuff. So Martin has asked, do you have family or kids? If so, how have you managed the time zone difference when it was just you? That's the aspect that holds me back, not being able to work from 5 p.m. onwards. So I want to understand kind of how you've based this challenge around time zones.
Okay, Martin, that's a great question. And that's a very important question to me, and kind of how I've set my business up as well. The first question, what's the catch? The catch is it's recruitment. It's not easy. Recruitment isn't easy. So whether you're doing it in the UK or you're doing it in the US, it's still, you're going to have people let you down. You're going to have people ghost you. You're going to have people not want to work with you. You're going to have interviews that don't go that well. It's just recruitment. And I'd probably say the time zone. So partly answering what you're asking here, Martin, I've got 2 kids. I've got 2 daughters, 9 and 7. When I was at SThree, I didn't get to see them grow up. I was in the office for 10, 12 hours a day, every day. When I set Hannison Green up, it was very important to me that my business would fit around my life, not the other way around. It is what I'd call a lifestyle business. I want to take my kids to school in the morning. I want to pick them up from school as well. We were talking about this offline before the show started. I'm working probably about a 6-hour day, Mike. I start work at about 10:30, 11 in the morning. I'll take my kids to school. I'll go to the gym. It's important that I do both of those things in the morning. Come back, get ready for work. That'll be about 10:30, 11. 3:30, 4 p.m. I'm done for the day. And I might, when the kids go to bed at 7 o'clock, I might have another, well, I will do this most days. I enjoy it. I'll have another hour. I'll just get my laptop on the sofa. I'll have another hour and wrap the day up. So I can manage it. So the time zone is the challenge to get used to, because the US is obviously between 8 hours and 5 hours behind, depending on the time zone. But everybody gets up really early in the US. I can only talk about my market. They're up and doing meetings at 5:30 in the morning. By the time if I'm meeting somebody in which 4 p.m. for me, 8 a.m. for them in California, okay, by the time I'm meeting them, they've already had 3 or 4 meetings in the morning. It's really normal for them to start their day super early. So what I tend to do is I will do all of my BD, admin, outbound, whatever we want to call it, sales activity in the morning, because if I'm sending somebody an email or an in-mail or an email, when they wake up in the morning, I'm going to be quite near the top.
Yeah.
Time zone, it works really well. I do all my meetings in the afternoon. So I'll do meetings from about 11 a.m., which is 7 a.m. At the moment on the East Coast, because of the time difference is slightly different at the moment. I'll do all my meetings in the afternoon. I could be done by 3, 4 p.m. each day. It's really manageable. If part of your decision making is you want to spend more time with your kids, I think the US works really well for that. Okay, I might do the odd meeting 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, but it's rare. It's rare. I think you can manage it so that you do your meetings in the afternoon, your BD, your sales outbound in the morning.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for that. We have another question, which I think is a really interesting one, because Zach's asked, do you think it's important to have a highly technical niche, or is there capacity for recruiters who have more of an admin/sales related niche? Because that, I think, is probably important.
I don't think it matters. I think the important word there is niche. I think it's important you have a niche. My niche is sales and marketing. I like doing sales and marketing positions. So if you had to pinpoint what I do, it's neuromodulation, it's startups, and it's sales and marketing and market access VPs and C-level. That's my niche. So I don't think it matters whether it's technical or commercially focused.
It's a good idea to have fees that are larger, though, isn't it? You know, you don't want to be making $3,000 fees. Really, it's if you're going to do it, you might as well do it properly and move up the chain as far as you get.
If you're placing VPs in the US, I don't know, across probably most industries, your average fee is going to be around 40,000-50,000 sterling, like your average fee.
It's a nice number. That's
where you want. That's where you want to play.
Yeah, fair enough.
That is a nice number. Can we bring Ashley's question up, because I'd like just to cover that one.
That was what I was about to bring up, actually, Michael, but fine. Yeah. Right. So Ashley's asked, on a similar note, do your terms of business need to reflect UK or US law?
Good question. I do use US terms in the US. I had a solicitor draw up some terms for me in the US. Didn't cost that much.
Well, can you, if you don't mind, you don't have to say now, but do you remember who that was? Because a lot of people are always looking for lawyers that can work with US law. There's a million people that claim it, but you just think, oh, I don't know. Is there anyone you'd recommend? Not on air necessarily, but we can put it out later on.
Offline. Yeah, let me dig a name out for you for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and on that, my terms are 30% for anything over $100,000 salary, which is everything. So that's where we're starting.
What's your payment period? Just quickly while we do this, what's your payment period?
21 days from when an offer is accepted. This is where it's different as well. In the UK, most recruiters will do it on when somebody starts work. I do it when an offer is verbally accepted.
21 days accepted. Yeah. Okay. And is there any sort of redemption period or anything attached to it as well? If they,
I do. I think I've got a 3 months 3 months free of charge replacement.
Right. Okay.
Which I've never had to use.
Someone's asked a follow-up question. Alan's asked, are they universal US terms or are they state-based terms?
Yeah, universal, so they're federal rather than state.
Okay, amazing. So we are coming to the end. We just got a couple of questions that I think are really good. So Lee's just asked this one. Would you disclose the client name straight away when you're talking to a candidate? Now, you already mentioned that you tend to go to candidates when you don't have a job and build that relationship first. But they've said that people from the US are a lot more direct than the UK. So are you more open about the name of the organization with the candidate?
I am, but I wouldn't do it in a DM before I'd spoken to the candidate. I very often give the name of a client out on the first conversation, but not in a DM.
Okay, all right. Perfect. Okay, so finally, Mike, before we start rounding up, James has asked, will there be a recording available? Yes, there is. If you go to the Mike Ames Recruitment Show page on LinkedIn, you'll see a recording of all of our previous attendees, or of course there is the YouTube channel for shows that are older than 6 months. So yes, James, there is an available. Now, in a second, Lindsay, we're going to be coming to you for your top tip. You've dropped a lot of knowledge on us today, so thank you very much. In fact, somebody has said that you've been a great guest for being really direct and helpful. So thank you so much, Lindsay. In a second, I'm going to come to you for that thing that people should do if they want to start there. But before then, Mike, can we talk about our next show?
Let's do that. We've got an old friend, actually, of Lindsay's, Greg Elton, and he's coming across to talk about how you can move into this, become a retained-only recruitment practice. Now, Retained had a really big drive here post-COVID and did really well, but it's, and if you can spot the spelling mistake on there, then, well, you should keep it to yourself.
I have just, though.
Yeah, you should keep it to yourself. I just spotted it. Isn't it funny how you don't read it when you read it? Anyway, but I think it's gone out of fashion a little bit now, and Greg still does 100% retained, and he still gets business really well. So he's going to come and talk to us, same way that Lindsay has, I hope, very kind of matter-of-factory, one step after another, to explain how you can do that if you're interested in retained only.
Okay, amazing. So, Lindsay, as I mentioned, at this point in the show, you've obviously dropped a lot of knowledge, but we like people to take something really implementable away that they can do. So somebody's watching this and they're thinking, that US market sounds hunky-dory to me. I'm a huge fan. What would you suggest is the thing that they go out and do immediately without any qualms in their mind?
Okay, well, look, I think the obvious one is do your research on the market that you go into. There needs to be some logic and some substance behind why you're choosing that market. But the top tip would be, just for me, candidate is king. Okay, you've got the W8 form there as well.
You've got two. You've got two. I love it, Lindsay.
Candidate is king. You've got to, in my opinion, you've got to work hard on building meaningful, trusting relationships with top tier candidates. Not okay candidates, not good candidates. Aim high. They'll talk to you. They will talk to you. Get them in your pocket, and the market will just open up for you.
Amazing.
I really like that. Just before we close, and Kirsty, just thank yous. I've got a couple of clients in California, and they take a similar stance. They're very much candidate led. I won't talk too much about them. It's not appropriate, but they are very much candidate led. That is the stance, and I don't know whether that's common to everyone in the States or just a few people.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is common.
But it works very well for them as well, I have to say.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Amazing. So it does come. My voice has managed to hold out. We're very excited about this. We've come to that point of the show where I'm going to say thank you. So first of all, I want to say a huge thank you to you, Lindsay. You've been so open. So there's been some lovely comments in the comment section about how much value you've added to a lot of people. So really, thank you so much for giving us your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and I hope there's been a little bit of value there to some of the people that are listening. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
You got to go through and read the comments later, man. There's a real lot of value in there.
Thank you very much. I want to say thank you to everybody in the comments. You've kept me company in there. You've asked really good questions. Mike and I always really enjoy it when you guys get involved. So thank you very much to everybody who's watched and those who've asked questions. And I suppose I should say thank you to Mike, mostly for being brave enough to wear that shirt.
It's a pleasure to be on the Kirsty Ames Recruitment Show, is all I can say. Thank you for inviting me. It's fantastic. Okay. I'll come again in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, we will, when we're speaking to Greg about Retained. Bye, guys.